Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Wednesday, August 6th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's choosing to join us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Rice on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that webpage and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using for over 20 years to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and a tool to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself from that page, and you can download a whole host of audio files or shows just like this one, where people have been stepped through the worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you, help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that, before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you choose to tap on it, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd greatly appreciate you doing so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a question or a comment from you, we'll address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. And the alternative is you can join us live. You can call one of the many numbers that Zoom puts out there for free, that, especially if you have a free long distance or unlimited long distance on your phone service. And you can call that one of the many numbers and then just enter our meeting ID, and you can either listen in or participate, unmute yourself with *6 and then speak up. After you enter the meeting ID, which is 853-2357-4173. So the meeting ID here is 853-2357-4173. And if you open up a web browser window and go to zoom.us, that would be the meeting ID that would give you full access to participate if you choose with video, audio, and or chat. So it's been a big, busy week on the Mind Shifters Radio. It's been a big, busy week with my caseload and with life events and with support group last night. I just finished sending an email to Christian Sundberg to find out how he's feeling about the possibility of joining us on Friday to discuss his book, and I will mention that if he responds during this hour, or I'll mention it tomorrow if he doesn't respond during the showtime today. So, how can we support you? What's on your mind? How would you like to spend this time together? This is what I normally um, offer as a set of questions in the support group. And we did that yesterday. It ended up being the perfect time for somebody to do a worksheet. And we encourage that soon and often. I just finished a session with someone. We did a worksheet right in the middle of the session. And, I marvel at the power of the tool. And I also, at different times, marvel at how stuck we can get in our comfortable patterns. I had someone, a husband and wife team, I was in a session with yesterday where I was reviewing the idea that we all have an addiction we don't know we have. And that addiction is an addiction to the familiar. And one way of thinking about how or why that could happen to basically every human being is that we developed, and that part of our mind-body energy system that we call the brain developed and evolved in an environment where physical safety was important. And back in 17, 1800s, I forget the exact numbers, but 40 was a lifespan. That was an expectancy. 35, 40, 45 years of age was all you could expect for a human. And that was because life was fraught with danger and disease and violence, and we were basically more in the food chain than at the top of it for a lot of our history as humans. And so the brain developed in a way that it rewarded people with the ability to pass along their genetics the more they took a fearful approach to life, the more they thought everything might be dangerous or anything might hurt them. And so our brains have basically evolved, grown, developed to overpredict for the negative. And it makes very good sense about how and why that would happen. And so the thing that will calm down my system when I've overpredicted for the negative is to be able to touch into an awareness that, well, whatever's going on right now, even if it's painful or even if it's uncomfortable, it's familiar, which means I've been here before and I survived it, so this is okay. So familiarity becomes associated in our mind very solidly with survival. And you can play with that, do your own observations about it. It makes a very good case. What's most useful about it for me is then it leaves me with options. What if, right? What if I can identify those things? What if I can work with my mind at a logical, rational level and help convince myself that just because it's familiar, and therefore that means I can survive it because I've been here before and I've survived it before, doesn't mean it's good or healthy or right for me. And then as soon as I open myself to that possibility and let myself live in that questioning state, is this really good for me? Is this something I really want to continue? As soon as I open it up in questioning, all kinds of possibilities open up. However, if I just keep plugging along, doing what's, living into my addiction of the familiar or the safe, I never ask those questions, and then I get very different results. Another thing that came up, I was listening back to some of the interactions from yesterday, and at one point in the interaction, Susan Bingham was mentioning something about Carl Jung, and I got distracted with the switchboard, and something flew right out of my mind. What flew out of my mind was she'd mentioned something about Jung saying we have to bring that shadow work, we have to bring it to the light. And, that just resonated for me. The work from the Thomas Gospels. And one of those sayings from the Thomas Gospels was, if you bring out what is within you will save you, will heal you, save you, transform you, whatever. If you do not bring out what is within you will destroy you. Just immediately when I say that, my mind floods to the thought from Guy Finley, who says over and over again, there's no such thing as bad self-knowledge. Most of us are out there doing destructive things to ourselves and others because we're running away from some content, fearful content or fearful conclusions that we've applied to the content in our minds. Most of us, if not every person who's ever done anything harmful to another person, did that as a byproduct of running from their own internal pain, fear, and sadness. And if I can become aware of that, and I can recognize that if it's in me and it's a thought and it's a life experience I've already had, I don't need to run away from it. It is safe to turn, slow down, and sit with it. It opens up all other kinds of possibilities, and what's likely going to happen first and foremost is I will instantly move away from doing those things, or the impulse to do those things that would be hurtful to others or myself and others will just fade away. And what we're doing in every worksheet process is asking to be shown the hidden part of our own mind. We quite literally, over and over again, are addressing this dynamic that the pain and fear and sadness that one human being brings out or invites others into is only the result of them running away from their internal pain, fear, and sadness. And to whatever degree I can get myself to scan for the earliest warning sign of tightness and tension and upset, and then get myself to use the awareness, the presence of a pain, fear, sadness, or upset, use that as a mechanism to trigger in my mind the use of tools. A calming breath, the EFT tapping, the goal canceling, a full-blown reality management worksheet, a breath session, the 3 early memories of conflict, the codependence to interdependence worksheet, the healing through relationships worksheet, whatever these tools are that I might resonate with. If I can start applying those tools at the earliest warning sign of upset, my life is going to be transformed, as it's going to continue to be transformed as it has over the last 20 years that I've engaged that process. So I almost went to autopilot and started reciting a phone number from the past. But if you have comments or questions or a suggested topic, unmute or email me or type something in the chat. I have weird little thing happening in Zoom where at the bottom of my participants list it says you can now send nonverbal feedback. Yes, slow down, etc. from reactions on the toolbar.
I wanted to
So
just, sorry, I just,
go right ahead, Susan.
further from yesterday. So sitting with what you said about discernment and valor, I, for some reason, couldn't let that go. So I went to go look up the etymology of discernment, like right from the origin all the way back to 12C, they said. And I loved what it said. It says the ability to perceive and understand. That is the origin of that word.
And you say it goes back to where?
I wrote it down. I looked it up in the etymology, right from, just let me find it here, ability to perceive it. And I think that was back all the way to its origin, and they named where it started. I'd have to look that up. But it was in the 1300s or 12,
Okay,
yeah, which was,
in the 13th century.
mhm, which I thought was amazing. So it says, yeah, it comes from a word called dice. I can't even pronounce the word, but in the 1300s. But yeah, it's, and
Right,
then it changed
but
in the mid 1400s.
right, but the idea is that there was a word before that. So we've known about this, right? Humans
Yeah.
have known about there's a big difference between judging something as good or bad, right or wrong, and just being able to see what it is and accept it. So discernment gives me the option to see what something is and just accept it as it is and then start to work with it. And judgment has me seeing something and then labeling it and creating a resistance and a tension and or a plan of action to change it.
Mhm.
And it's not that either is right or wrong. It's just that it's really useful for us to be aware
To perceive, yeah. To be
of
able to
what the
that
dynamics
difference.
are, right?
Yeah.
Of what the dynamics are when we resist what our perception shows us. It's also hugely useful to me to be aware of how active my power of perception is,
That's the key. That's what
right?
that word, the word that I find when I see the words, because it's all symbology, right? To me, words are symbology. So, but it's pointing us to something. So the ability to perceive and understand, because those are two, as we know, those are two different meanings. To watch something in observation without meaning, because A Course in Miracles says there is no meaning, right, to anything other than what we give it.
Yeah, and Course in Miracles also says about this perception thing, you must come to understand the distorting power of the way you want things to be,
Hmm.
right? So anytime I set a goal,
Yeah,
anytime I have a preference, it is an active factor in whatever shows up in my mind. One of the more stunning examples of that happened on this internet show many years ago when we were still on 1 hour a day, and I was like co-host or whatever. Certain days Michael wouldn't be there, so I'd be the host. But in that environment, there was a woman named Michelle and a woman that everyone knows, Jeannie Rice, and they were listening to something I said on one show. And then they had a conversation between themselves that they were so happy, they were just excited that I was dating someone. And I never said I was dating someone, but they both heard it, right? Whatever was going on, whatever sounds were reaching their ears, they both clearly perceived something that never happened, and it was created in their minds by their desire to see me in a partnership.
yeah. Hmm.
So this thing that you found in the definition that goes back to the 1200s for discernment is that their understanding, and when they say to understand, to perceive and understand, what they're what they're weaving into that statement is the understanding part, right? So the
Okay.
perception can be off. And if the perception's off, I won't understand. So discernment is about this true perception, that spiritual faculty that Michael Rice talks about, not just perception, not this act of creating images in my mind, but what we have to use words, right? Because we're just humans. So we've put the words true perception to try and point at a spiritual faculty that will leave us in accurate, direct connection and contact with the flow of life.
Mm.
Whereas most of us have created this cheap knockoff of that, which is our perception, right? My perception is, and my understanding is, and then we fight for the right
Mm.
to be angry and upset when somebody else creates a different image and meaning and perception.
So is that the difference between reality and actuality then? So since we're looking through a lens of our own perception, true perception is pointing to actuality. Is that safe to say?
Yes, exactly. That would be right in line with what Dr. Michael Rice was thinking when he created the distinction in his mind and in his work between actuality and reality.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's what I notice, as I was saying yesterday, the dying of the false self,
Right.
to
And
be able
and
to
and
just
and
observe.
and you keep saying that, right? The dying of the false self, etc. And so if you had come in today any differently with the tears up or whatever, one of the things that I was going to offer you was the idea of shifting
Okay.
that observation or that goal, right? Dying to the false self, etc.
Okay.
It's, Susan, I have to give it to you. It is so dramatic. I feel it. I can see the drama playing out, dying to the false self, the bad overactor, right? The Jim Carrey of overacting,
It's a Shakespeare
throwing
play
himself.
after all.
That's right, flopping on stage for 5 minutes, right? With the spear or the knife wiggling, and I get that, right?
Thank you
I
for acknowledging
I
it has
would.
to be that dramatic for them. I so appreciate that. This life
so
script I've created.
So what I am offering is
Okay.
this. It's just one of a infinite number of
I love it.
alternatives. But I would offer this kind of phrase or this kind of little target for your development. Instead of saying I'm dying to the false self, one might get different results or a different felt sense or a different dynamic going if you say I'm learning the truth about my false self. I'm seeing through the lies of my false self. So I don't
Mm.
have to destroy it. I don't have to kill it. I
Yeah.
don't have to die to it. It doesn't have to die for me. It's a tool.
Or I'm seeing through the illusion of the
Yeah.
false self.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm seeing
Okay.
some of the impacts. I'm seeing some of the unuseful, unhelpful impacts of believing in the false self. And it just that shift takes you away
Yes.
from the dying aspect and the melodrama or the need to purge or strip away and just be more in allowance and acceptance and have a uh, like this common practice to invite that spiritual faculty of true perception, invite correction.
Thank you for that. That's yeah, and just even you saying that, I realize in this life, for whatever reason, shift, and even that the wording that I use, right? The dying to the false self, it just seems like everything has to be warring her up and rather than an invitation. So thank you. Thank
Right.
you for
And
that.
and and the whole point of it is that this is ancient spiritual teachings. I didn't create this. I'm just passing along little bits and pieces
Yeah,
I've gotten from other people. But the whole point of this is the part of you that wants to die to your false self
yeah.
is your false self, and you'll never accomplish that task. You will never dismantle your ego because the part of you that says I'm here to dismantle my ego is your ego. In other words,
Okay.
when you get to we were on the way of mastery in the first lesson. We pulled this out not too long ago. I pull it out every once in a while. This pathway, whether it's I believe that the Course in Miracles and the Way of Mastery have a very, very similar pathway. But this pathway says, look, you will discover that the pathway we're offering, we're calling it, right, the pathway of the way of the heart is the title of the first book of the Way of
Mm,
Mastery, right? The way of the heart, the pathway of the way of the heart, the pathway of awakening. It says you'll discover it's not a pathway of denial. It's not a pathway of avoidance. It is a pathway of truthfulness, allowing, not a pathway of accomplishment and pride. It is a pathway of actively releasing or working to remove from your consciousness every hope and every wish to be special, or every hope and wish to see yourself as having made progress, so that you can pound a fist on your chest and spread your tail feathers and think in terms of, oh, good, I'm getting God's attention and she's going to let me into the kingdom of heaven soon.
hmm.
This pathway is about, like, why do you want to die to your false self? And by the way, as you're thinking that question, who is it in you that wants to die to your false self?
You said it earlier. I realize as I asked that question, it is the part of me that lives in separation, which what
Exactly.
part of me lives in separation would be the ego, edging God
Exactly.
out.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Hmm.
One time, whether it was in a darshan that we were watching on the support group or one of the Q&As from the Way of Mastery that we were listening to, one time JM was talking and he said, I'm going to give you some exercises here that'll help dismantle your ego. And then he was quick to put a sidebar in there and say, by the way, you will not be dismantling your ego because the part of you that thinks it wants to dismantle your ego is your ego, right?
Yeah.
He said, however, if you use these tools, he didn't use that phrase, but I'm using the phrase use the tools because that's what Michael Rice uses so often. If you do these exercises, you will begin to wake up and see more accurately what this thing you call yourself and your ego and your pride and those things that you value and those things, those ideals that you believe in, you'll be able to see more accurately what
Mm,
they are and navigate through life better because you won't be falsely elevating them up to some pedestal or putting yourself down in some pit or vice
mhm.
versa.
Very
So,
important.
so
Yeah.
please give up the idea that you're going to be dying to your false self and recognize that's a phrase that comes from archaic language that's been translated through the cultures, through the eons over time, through different languages. So it carries that, that dying, that killing
Yeah.
off, that it carries that duality based dynamic assumption, right? That in order for one thing to live, another one has to die, etc. And what's probably closer to the truth from these ancient teachings is that they had a language that says, look, don't attack your ego. Don't get upset about it. Just pat it on the head and give it some Oreo cookies and milk over at the kiddie table, and it'll be fine, right? Because then it'll be there for you to use when it's the proper tool.
Yeah. It reminds me of I would be attending your Tuesday nights support group, but I'm in another support group on Tuesday nights. And my teacher in that one, last night she read the poem by Rumi of the Guest House. Right? Invite all
Right,
the guests in, like your
right.
sadness, your anger, and allowing it all and just see what they have to offer. Rather than, thank you for that, because that predisposition to fighting and having to kill it, that right there, I
That's
can
our
feel it
culture,
right in the
right?
core. I can feel you telling me, I can feel it right here, right in the core of my sacred heart.
Yeah, that's our culture. We're a warring culture. We're a divisive culture.
Hmm.
We're a culture that's grown up in this dualistic mindset. Yeah.
And then to be able to just be with it and embrace it. And also, in my journey, I realized that when things come up, for example, doubt, that seems to be in my gene keys. It is in my gene keys, and I'm always looking through that lens, and then being able to hold that as a gift because it's taking me somewhere. It's a tell, and not to
So
hate it, right?
so help me understand what you mean when you say, or what word you're using when you say gene something
Oh,
keys.
Gene Key. I don't know if you've heard Richard Rudd wrote, it's based on human design was its origin, and then he studied under that. Then he developed the protocol. He got a download that came in around the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, and he developed the process of the gene keys, which basically outlines, the 64 characters of which human evolution, and we each fit into one, or into a combination of a holographic design of who we are.
Okay, so how are you bringing that into this? Something about your
About
gene
doubts. Yeah,
keys?
the gene keys in my gene keys profile, it talks about one of my root challenges in this life is to overcome. My foundation is my purpose is truth. And then he talks about the shadow, and he talks about the gift, and then he talks about the acidic nature of who we are. So in that particular profile, my shadow is doubt, my gift is inquiry, and my truth or my purpose is truth. Yeah, to find truth. And so then his premise is you must go through the shadow to unlock the key to get to the acidic nature. So that's why
To get to what nature?
the acidic, Siddhic, the acidic, the higher inquiry of the higher mind.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's a whole system I'm not familiar with, although it certainly seems to, be a coherent set of thoughts and words. So I hope that's useful
Hmm.
for you.
Yeah, it is very so. Yeah, I guess I was wanting just to share the fact using what we perceive as I want to say negative qualities. Those are actually gateways for inquiry, like you even said, rather than being open. When you said about opening up and asking a question, that's when curiosity comes in. So I'm just trying to be more there. And yeah, you just helped me realize that even in locking myself down, saying that I'm having to die to the false self, that doesn't make any room for anything new.
Well, and it creates a warrior template, right? It
Mm,
creates a sacrifice here. Um,
yeah,
God said to Abraham, "Go kill your son," right? It creates that kind of a Old Testament
yeah,
model.
yeah. Thank you. That I don't. I mean, I likely lived that many lifetimes. So thank you for being my mirror to open that up for me. I really appreciate that. Thank
You're
you.
very welcome and deserving. And the other thing is that, we were talking yesterday or the day before, we were talking about the interview that I listened to with Eben Alexander done by Roger McFillin, Dr. Roger McFillin, and how in it Eben Alexander says he uses some sound as a powerful tool to augment his meditation or realignment, whatever you want to call it, and that he does a concentrated hour or two a day of silence, focus, meditation, whatever you want to call it, right? He he dedicates an hour or two each day to doing something very different than what we're doing most of the rest of the time. We're thinking and we're talking and we're doing. And he's made that commitment because he sees the enormous benefit in his life to getting quiet, slowing down, at least tuning out from. I mean, this old mind chatter and voice, and it may never go away, and yet I don't have to keep it right here and treat it like it's myself and my purpose, and I can just let it fade away and point my attention in another direction. And as I heard him do that, or talk about that, I was put to mind of Michael Rice, who's been saying fairly commonly lately that he's reached a point in his life where he can spend an hour or two, or I've heard him say, or three in the morning, just being awake, not doing anything, not meditating, not trying to achieve a different state of mind, etc. So, why am I mentioning that now with you? Because you are one of the people who's come across my path recently who is bright intellectually and really hyper focused on the intellectual and using the intellectual to understand and comprehend and grok at deep levels, etc. And that's fine and can be fun and entertaining, can even be useful at different times, and it's not the whole package. That if I stay there, I'm actively distracting myself from that still small voice, from that ready access to insight, intuition, inspiration. I I distract myself from the awareness of my own access to that wisdom pool.
Got it. I experienced that at the silent meditation retreat. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I also just I as soon as I said that and you said the silent meditation retreat, I I I will have to look up her name, but I interviewed a young woman who had her story is that she'd been a lifelong meditator and she would do it a lot. And she would go to these monasteries on the weekends for retreats and tune-ups for her meditating, etc. And she'd had a medical history that uh, she understood as kind of mild absent seizures, right? So an absent seizure is a person just all of a sudden goes blank and starts staring and doesn't seem to take in input from the outside or respond to the outside. And it's, because it's a short-term thing and the person returns to functioning, they don't call it being catatonic or, some long-term problem. They just say it's just a seizure. It comes and goes. So here she is. I'm guessing she's in her 30s and she's bright and, active and high functioning. And as I said, she would go to these retreats and she showed up one time at her doctor's office for some kind of a regular yearly checkup or what a physical for work or whatever. And while she was there, she had one of these, what she thought was these little seizures. And her whole life she's been having them. But apparently she'd never had one in front of a medical expert before. And the next thing she knows, she's lying on the ground and the physician has a major needle he's about to jab into her chest. And she says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Oh my God, you coded. You went out. This is that norepinephrine adrenaline push in your heart to try and bring you back to life kind of thing." She goes, "What?" And she learned in that process that these quote little close quotes seizures she was having were not so little. And so they ran all these tests and we've got to help find out what's this vibrant young woman, and they come back and they tell her This was a stress-induced seizure. She goes, wait, what are you talking about? I'm an accomplished meditator. I've been meditating for years. I think she said when she was 12, she learned about meditation and loved it so much that she did it on a regular basis. And this can't be. What do you mean stress? I can't have that much stress. I routinely meditate. Guess what? They were right. What she was doing in her meditation, these days you might call it a spiritual bypass, right?
Mm,
And so what she learned through the process was she had all kinds of trauma and emotions and this that were not getting resolved by her doing meditation. And so she created a process, and you know what, I'll, I, with a request from someone, I will look back through my my 200 on your mind podcasts and find that one. And
okay.
but the essence of it was she needed to explore the mental, emotional, right? The deep sense, physical, the what am I making this mean? She needed other layers of understanding of what her mental processing was doing. She couldn't just go and meditate
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't resolving the trauma energy, the false beliefs, the low self-esteem, the other, right? Whatever's going on in her that was at like this internal fusion generator generating upset and tension. And then she would, it dawned on her that, well, you know what? She did have this experience that she would go to those retreats and be all frenetic trying to get out of work so she could make the long drive to get to the monastery, and then she wouldn't really slow down and start relaxing until Saturday afternoon, and then Sunday morning after all
Mm,
these hours of chanting and meditating, and she'd finally start to feel good. But then by the time she reached Monday or Tuesday at work, she was revved up to this chaotic. So she saw that, this was something that she had been observing, but she didn't put it together. And so the evidence was there for her to see that she had off the chart stress that the meditation alone wasn't resolving.
mm-hmm.
So, we're all in that position, right? Uh, the best thing that I can take from that, stories like that I hear from her and others, is that we can just be results oriented, right? Don't be into the theory, don't be into the belief. Pay attention to how it's actually working for you. And if you're getting good results and it's working well, great, keep doing it. If not, please feel free to try something else. Bottom line
Yeah,
observation number one.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm just reflecting now with your words while being there. I'm very, I'm goal driven, tenacious, right? I look back, okay, all I knew is I'm gonna complete the 15 days no matter what. Whatever it takes, I'm doing it.
Damn
That's
the torpedoes, full speed ahead.
just, no matter what, I'm doing it. I mean, 15 days, how hard can it be? But I look back, I would say present, but yeah, underlying, I'm going to sit with what you said. I think there's an opportunity, and just to be what you said, Dr. Rice, just being in presence, nothing to do, just being and seeing what gets revealed. And I love what you said yesterday when you talked about just being in the present moment, no thoughts aren't, and I said thoughts aren't necessary, and letting life be revealed. And Dr. Rice said something in the radio call that it landed. This is all new that your guy, I met him in April, and then went to his retreat and full force into this work. But he said life is love moving into every cell. And I'm like, wow, like just allowing, like love is already there. It's already here. It's who we are. And just the allowance of that, not having to do everything. So I'm going to really Yeah, I'm going to sit with all that you said, and I can feel it energetically behind the words you're saying is very important. I really can feel it. but yet my intellect hasn't caught up to it yet, but my spirit has. So I really appreciate that, and to be open to receive it and then allow it to uh, percolate and observe what gets revealed. So thank you.
Well, you're entirely welcome and deserving. I know I have a number of different memories are flooding up for me that I've talked about a couple of them over the years, but where there are people who meditate religiously, I hesitate to use that word, but they meditate every day.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they've got the same issues at the same or higher intensity as they did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
One of the people that Dr. Michael Rice had at his intensive center, had to be over 10 years ago, was connected to a guru, and the guru wanted his followers to be meditating for 2 hours every day. And that meditation was comprised of the reciting of a whole list of names for God.
Oh, I've got that book. I got a book like that, 72 Names of God.
And Michael wanted me to go with her to see if we could arrange, if I could facilitate an introduction to her guru, because there were people that came. Well, she was a bit like based in Florida and would travel up here, but people that would come to this person's center just to be in the presence of the master, just to have him look in your eyes and you look in his eyes or whatever. And she'd been doing that. I believe at the time that the number that sticks in my mind was that she'd been following him and therefore ostensibly meditating 2 hours a day for 7 years.
Mm.
And Michael said, this woman is one of the most intensely negative, agitated people I've ever had at Heartland. It's just another one of those examples of how, the meditating alone, for most of us, isn't curative.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Like I have to say, for me, it was I did get to face myself. I had like so many experiences where I'm looking at myself as a like a bee land, just an illustrated bee landed on me in a walking meditation. And of course, in that moment, the bee went there because you're in meditation. I'm walking, doing the meditation. I can hear the buzzing, a big bee, and it lands on me, but it's not going anywhere. And it went into my coat. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get stung. Like all these thoughts. So I had to face all the, and it showed me about my past self coming in the present moment, me making up a story about it. And I realized after just wanted me to be. And the bee stayed with me for the whole hour inside there, rested inside my coat for the hour. And then I took my coat off when I went to go sit down and it flew away. And I thought it was an amazing metaphor that God just said, just be here now.
And used a bee to get the message across.
Then used a little, there was a divine being in the bee telling me just be. It was beautiful. But that is very important because and I've done lots of different things like plant medicines, ayahuasca, I've drank a number of times, and I see many people the integration piece and using the tool to get to the deeper truth, and like you said, not to spiritually bypass. So I really appreciate all that you said, and yeah, the journey is to open my awareness to the actuality of life. That really is, and to see the truth and be the truth.
You know, one of the things that just popped in my head when you were saying that is the idea that so many of us get on a path like this and we um, when we're open to it, we'll try a tool like the reality management worksheet or the EFT tapping or Michael's connected breathing that he calls still point, etc. and will say, wow, I got really upset and agitated, and I finally gave in and decided to do one of those darn worksheets or do a tapping session or do some breath. And wow, that really helped. I'm going to start doing that when I get upset. And so we spend this period of time, it's kind of like stages of growth and development. We spend a period of time where I might call this reactionary application of the
Mhm.
spiritual tool. So once I get triggered, once I get upset, once I realize you're really making me angry or whatever silliness that is, then I decide to go get quiet and take a breath and do what Shirzad Shamin would call PK reps, right? Positive intelligence gym reps, where I focus on my breathing and the physical felt sensations in the moment, etc., just for 10 or 15 seconds. And so there's a stage of our development where that's what we do. We go through, and again, our life gets considerably better, right? Because we don't spend as much time in the negative emotional states. If you've been around here long enough, you've heard me say, this is one of the things I tell people. The use of these tools has improved the quality of my life beyond what words can say. So, how do I point at it? Well, I say, well, the first thing I try and tell people to help them understand how much better my life is in the past 20, 25 years using these tools or tools like this is that I spend the tiniest fraction of time during my day in the negative emotional states,
Yeah, beautiful.
right? But that's like a stage in our development. And how did I get there? Well, I set my mind up in the morning when I got up to say, okay, now take a little bit more of your mental energy and scan all throughout the day in your physical body and your emotions. And at the earliest warning sign, you call a timeout and you take a breath and you turn the focus inside and you do this little let it go thing. And that's really, really, really helped me transform my experience of life for the better by leaps and bounds. And what I heard with Eben Alexander and Michael, and there's another level, which is all these people who are who have successfully used the meditation tool in conjunction with others. So they're actually clearing out the garbage. They're not just doing the spiritual bypass. Eventually, they reach the point where they say, hey, I'm just going to start going into that mode for extended periods of time on my own without even having to be triggered.
Hmm.
Right? I'm going to start doing like the Thich Nhat Hanh, the walking meditation. I'm going to make like the Dalai Lama gets up at like 3 in the morning and does some hour or two of prayer and meditation and then more and then more. He's got this whole ritual where his alive, awake, aware energy in the day is focused on something other than just perpetuating the conscious logical chatter.
Mm. And that you're saying that, you know, it is. It feels like it's unplugging from the program and being in actuality.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, or plugging in to the actuality, right?
plugging,
Getting
taking the awareness.
aligning the receivers within me to be able to be attuned to that.
Yeah, rather than the constant, the carbon-based memory mind programming of the intellectual mind chatter of thought or speech. This is a great opportunity to, yeah, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is,
Yeah,
you've been
and
so
and
helpful, so deeply, deeply helpful. I see your soul and your spirit, and I'm in deepest gratitude for that.
well, let me just respond to that
Yeah.
with the observation from the way of mastery.
Okay.
The genius wisdom that we were taught on the playground as kids. Take a breath,
Yeah.
try and let this in.
Okay.
This is an observation you can make for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It takes one to know one.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it brings emotions up.
Well, whatever you were saying that you see in me and you see my soul and this, that, and the other thing, you couldn't see it in me if it wasn't already in you.
Mm. I can see resistance, but I'm going to,
You can see it, I can feel it.
I know. Isn't that funny? It's true what you're saying. The thing is, what you're saying is truth. And yet that, I don't know what that is, the ego part will not allow it. I can see the resistance to let that in. Isn't that
Okay,
crazy?
well, there's your work, right? There's your
That
next big
is
piece of
worksheet.
work. You go around telling everybody how beautiful they are
I
while
know.
you're thinking of yourself as a trollish, ogreish mix that poisons people by your very presence, and you're going to get a limited result.
Oh shit. Okay, I'm coming
Hey,
on the
hey,
call.
language.
I mean, sorry. Can we work that? I'm coming on Thursday night to your, and if you can help me work that one in a worksheet, I would greatly appreciate that on Thursday night.
Sure.
Okay. I will be there Thursday night. And I'll be on the call tomorrow, of course, too. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you for
entirely
your help.
welcome and deserving. I will remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and